Welcome to Where Her Heart Speaks, a show designed to challenge and disrupt ineffective thoughts and behaviors to help you not only embody peace, joy, calm, and certainty, but also to help you live the life you've always dreamed of living. Where Her Heart Speaks with Coach Catherine begins now.
Hi there, it's Coach Catherine. Have you ever wondered about the state of your nervous system? Do your thoughts, behaviors, and actions come from your authentic self, or are they trauma responses? We've all heard about the fight or flight response, but what does that really mean? I've created a quick and easy assessment for you to determine the state of your nervous system. Is it keeping you safe? Is it keeping you stuck? Or is it allowing you to be your most authentic self and thrive? If you'd like to know the answer to that question, as well as how maybe you can experience more peace and calm in your life, I'd invite you to go to my website at www.catherinejames.com. And right there on the front page, you can find and take the assessment. Welcome and welcome back. I am Catherine James, international speaker, best-selling author, trauma-informed coach, and your host for this show, Where Your Heart Speaks. I am excited yet again. I have said over and over here in the recent past that we would be covering some very juicy topics and conversations. And today, I again, I think I'm making good on that. So I have Dr. Anya, who is a Doctor of Human Sexuality with us. And today we're going to be talking about or answering the question, does high achievement in the boardroom result in low achievement in the bedroom? Yeah, that was just a moment for a pause necessary. So, Dr. Anya, welcome and thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm doing really, really well up here in Northern California. It's a beautiful day, nice and sunny, and I'm so happy to be talking about sex and intimacy and relationships with you today.
Yeah, this is different for me. Being someone who was in the corporate sector for a number of years, more I won't necessarily say rigid, but more composed. This is not a topic that I would have broached so freely in the past. And I realized that that's not just my story. And while it's not a topic we broach, it is a topic that is very necessary because based on my own life, based on the work that I've done with other women, high achieving women, this topic about what goes on in the bedroom, while it's a hush hush, it
Mm,
probably should be talked about a little more because many are unfulfilled. And it doesn't have anything to do with partners. So we came together because you said something to me one day that just really piqued my interest and was in alignment with how I think about how we exist in the world. And basically, that high achievers live in their head for the most part. Um, and because of that, maybe have a disconnection to the body.
mhm.
And when you said that, which leads to some issues in the bedroom, when you said that, I was like, whoa, I must have you on the show. So we have this topic. Does high achievement in the boardroom result in low achievement in the bedroom? So before we answer that question, I want you to just share a little bit about yourself, how you came to be Dr.
Mhm.
Anya, dealing in sexuality and all of that good stuff, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I love this title, by the way. This is just, I mean, it hits it on the nail exactly. And I have so much to share about that from my point of view in my practice. So yeah, in about 2016, I went back to grad school and I got my degree in human sexuality. And previous to that, I had been a sex educator and I had a radio show dealing in sex. Um, and as a sex educator, I taught in colleges, universities. I taught private classes. I flew around the world and taught all kinds of interesting workshops. And kind of wanted to retire from teaching and start a clinical practice. So I went back and got my degree. And then prior to being a sex educator, I did hands-on body work for many, many years. And I've been trained in Tantra and some kinky stuff and something called sexological body work, which is the work of Dr. Joseph Kramer, which is actually quite profound and really nice and necessary for some people. But I decided I wanted to stop doing any kind of hands-on or what I call in the field research, and get, clinical practice and just kind of go like really in the mainstream and disseminate all the information that I had learned over basically a 30-year career as a specialist and really get this information out to couples in long-term relationships where I think there is the highest pain point in terms of monogamy kind of creating its own stuff. So really helping couples in long-term relationships who are high achievers. Most of my clients, 99.9% of my clients, are in corporate or academia or tech, a lot of people in tech, and very much live in their heads and really do suffer all kinds of issues, sexual health concerns like erectile dysfunction and vaginismus, which is like pelvic floor pain and pain during sex. And there's so many ways in which the anxiety or living in the head all the time can create all kinds of different issues in the body. And all kinds of other issues come along with that too, like mismatched libidos, desire discrepancy. And so I mainly work with couples, some individuals in a relationship, and through a process of them getting out of their heads and into their bodies. And of course, there's many, many things that are great about being in our heads. We don't want to be only in the body. So just by having that nice balance, right? Like having that balance and getting more kind of intelligence, physical intelligence, I've seen some of these even really impacted sexual health concerns just go away and disappear. So it's really my privilege to do this work with folks. Yeah.
So I am curious,
Mhm.
what attracted you to this topic? Like, is
Mm.
there a backstory or I
There's always an origin story. Always an origin story. So my mother is a physician, and so I was raised with a doctor mom, like in the 70s and the 80s, when most people's parents weren't female doctors. So it's kind of a big deal to have this, mother who was very much in sort of like a man's world back then, as a physician. And so she really taught us a lot about our bodies. Like I grew up saying like the actual word for female genitalia. Everybody else was saying a different word, but we said the clinical word. It was very like we were educated about the body. But on the flip side, my dad and my mom had split up when I was quite young. My dad like owned a strip club and was like in this whole other kind of like, vein of sexuality. So I had these kind of disparate sort of, my dad was hanging out with like there was bikers going to the club, and then my mom's like this super professional. Um, and then other than that, my mother joined an ashram when I was really young. So I was raised, and if people don't know what an ashram is, it's basically a spiritual community that follows a spiritual program. So I lived in India some of the time when I was a kid. And I saw this like really deep kind of cultural norm around sexuality from India and from the ashram, which was very much like segregated, like men are on one side of the room, women are on the other side of the room. So as a young person, I was getting so many different messages. Like my messaging was just all over the place. And I decided at a really young age that I wanted to find out what was really true for me. Like what's true in the world of sexuality outside of what all these other forces want me to believe is true. And so I kind of started down this path of my own exploration. And I started taking classes and I got more and more curious. I became a massage therapist and it was just like I was following breadcrumbs. And the more I learned, the more I saw how much more there is to learn from a spiritual perspective, from an anatomy physiology perspective, from an interpersonal relationship perspective, cultural. I mean, once you start going in this realm, it's just never ending. So that's why it's been 30 years. I'm sitting here, still a student of human sexuality, but with also a lot more knowledge than when I started out. So
Yeah.
that's the origin. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds like it was kind of your purpose.
I think you might be right about that. I think you might be right. I think I kind of landed right on it at an early age. So
How
yeah.
cool is that? How cool is that? So I want to get into, like, we talk about this being organic and all of these questions start to rise up. I think before we get into this, there's one thing that's showing up and I just have to honor it. Um, there is this taboo around sex and talking about sex, and even as we were prepping, I'm like, do I say sex, do I say intimacy? Like,
Mm.
sex just feels like this bad thing. And um if there were a way, something that you could say to help people like me dispel the myth that it's a bad thing, which I know it's not, and that it's a lot of just story created around it, what would you say?
Oh, and that's such an important um space to kind of bring up, but that's just like an important thing to recognize is that for so many people, sex is really taboo. And it's not something that folks talk about with anybody. They don't talk about it. And you might tell your mother everything and your sister everything and your best friends everything, but you might not talk about that. For some people, it's true that it's something that is very deeply personal. And I do think there's a lot of suffering around sexuality, like one sexual identity, pleasure, permission to have pleasure. And so that's something that I hold very dear with my clients is that we really create a safe space to start having conversations about something that's so vulnerable. So I would say that number one, it's normal for it to feel a little bit charged. We don't have, where do we talk about it? It's not normalized in our society. So it makes sense that you would feel a certain way. Also, we all come from different backgrounds, religious, cultural, lots of conditioning and messaging around sex as a topic. So I just really invite people to just, create a safe space. If that's with me, if it's with another coach, consultant, or therapist, with their partner, and just start going really slow. And, being a trauma informed coach, and I'm also very trauma informed as well, that we never push ourselves past what the slowest part of our bodies want to go. Like if your pace is slow, you stay slow and slowly titrate into having more and more normalized conversations about sex. So that's the beginning piece of your question. And then, as you gain more traction, then it kind of opens up from there. And then we just start talking and
Yeah.
it gets easier. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I chuckle because every time you say something, another question comes up. Like my mind
Oh, good.
has to go, right?
Yay. Yeah.
And maybe I'll come back to this because what came up for me as you were talking was just, you said that there are all kinds of religious beliefs, there's cultural beliefs, but then I also went to the individuals you mentioned, suffering individuals who suffered some type of sexual abuse and what that would do for their beliefs or thoughts regarding or around sex. But I'm going to come back to that if we get an opportunity.
Yeah.
I want to dive into what we're talking or what our title is presenting, because not that the other is not important, but this is
Mm.
kind of I think, again, something that's not talked about, but also two paradigms, if you will, that are not joined together. So
Yeah.
When we think about high achievement in the boardroom, when you talk about people living in their heads and being disconnected from their bodies, what are your thoughts? What would you, I know you have many, not only your thoughts, but your learnings. What
Right.
comes up
Yeah.
just as you hear that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, one thing that really comes up for me a lot is just dealing with anatomy, physiology, neurobiology, and what's happening actually in the body.
Mm.
So, I really love to come from that lens,
Yes.
because I'm not a therapist. I'm not coming from a psychological lens. I'm coming from a sexological lens. So, when we talk about human sexuality, what's actually happening in the body? And what's happening in the body, oftentimes when people are in their heads, is a lot of stress. So, whereas you get a tremendous amount of reward for being really good in the boardroom, you get, your reputation, money, credentials, awards potentially, you get elevated up the ladder. You get so much that a lot of high achievers, in order to get that, are running off of stress and adrenaline. Get up in the morning, chug your coffee, take your pills, hurry up on the treadmill, rush to work, meetings, 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 meetings. And being in that state of high cortisol all day long, it's not super easy for our bodies to suddenly relax, exhale, get back into the body. And where really good sex happens is coming from a state of relaxation. That's why a lot of times people go on vacation and then suddenly they're connecting with their spouse or their partner. They're like, oh, now we're eye gazing. Now we can hug and touch each other. And of course, from there, maybe they're having better sex.
I,
And it's
I want
because when you're in that
to
state, oh, sorry, go ahead.
said something, and I want people
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah. Okay.
Great sex comes from a state of relaxation, just like a pause right there.
Hmm.
Because how many of us don't take the time to relax? You gave a whole scenario of what, for most people, an average day looks like. Most high achievers, an average day looks like running, running, running from this meeting to that meeting. Like there is no room for just breathing.
Hmm.
And so I had to just kind of break in like news flash or breaking news.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening and you're wondering like why is sex boring or why don't I have time for it, why don't I like it anymore,
Yeah.
just think about that. How much are you relaxing?
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about like in the early 20s when life was grand and
Hmm.
sex was grand. Like it was, we lived really in a state of relaxation. There wasn't all this stress. There wasn't all of this just go, 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 and adrenaline that you mentioned. We were just enjoying life and you were able to enjoy all aspects of life. So I just felt the need to pause right there for a moment, as opposed to running by and just helping people to think about and ask the question of themselves, are you relaxing? How much
Right.
relaxation do you have in a day? So I'm going to encourage you to continue on. And sorry about that.
No, I mean, I love that you just kind of put a pin at you. You just nailed that right to the wall because that's the number one thing to think about is, our bodies are really our friends. I mean, our bodies want us to be the best people that we can be in all areas of our lives. We really have a psychopharmacology within our own bodies. We just have to hack into it. So basically that's what I do is I really teach people how to lean towards pleasure and those yummy hormones like oxytocin and healthy dopamine and all the pleasure hormones that really are sort of a medicine or balance to those high levels of stress and adrenaline and cortisol. We can't be running off that forever. The body will start breaking down. And two of the things that go offline when we're in a high state of fight or flight and stress, are digestion and reproduction, aka everything sex. Those things will go offline. So the body will pay less attention to that need and more attention to just running from the proverbial tiger, whatever that looks like, your boss, your deadline. And so what we want to do is swing it back to getting back into the parasympathetic nervous system, into rest and digest. And when you go back there, then some of these other things come back online, like for folks who have what I call erectile variations. I don't like the word dysfunction because it's not an accurate representation of what's happening in the body. But all folks with erectile tissue have erectile variations. You see it a little bit more with people who have an outie versus an innie, but everybody's having it. So folks that are having those issues oftentimes are having a lot of stress. They're living in their heads. They're, scared. There's intrusive thoughts coming up, ruminating thoughts and fears. For a lot of women who are not achieving peak arousal, also, they're saying they're really in their heads. There's like all the, the dishes and all the things that they haven't gotten done, and super disconnected from their bodies.
Yeah.
So again, it's really about like tipping back over into, well, what does have you feel really good? Like maybe it's a really deep emotional conversation with your partner. And that's where we come to intimacy. Intimacy is the bedrock, it's the foundation, it's the garden, it's the soil of the garden. You need all that. And what do you need to like have those intimate conversations? Et cetera, and so on. I could tell there's something, I see thought bubbles with you, Catherine. So what are you thinking?
No, I appreciate that you brought that up because as I shared, my belief is that intimacy starts long before we enter the bedroom or wherever you're going to have sex. But intimacy has to be there. Like that is the fuel that leads into or drives, I think, the sexual organs, and oftentimes what I hear is male or female, will come in and it's like, hey, how you doing, hun? And then da 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 da, and then it's time to go to bed, and it's like now we want to rub and touch, and it's like, wait a minute, nothing's going on here.
Yeah, right.
So I like that you brought that up and just gave a little snippet or a nugget for those of you who are listening. If you missed it, she talked about what makes you feel good, and to really think about that. Is it to have a really good conversation with your mate? And if that's what it is, then how do you do that? Do you need to schedule it? Do you need to put it on you all's calendar? Or do you just maybe need to hold hands as you're sitting and watching television? Like, I don't have the research around it, but I have read some information about just holding hands heightens our reproductive organs. So I don't know if that sounds true for you, but I do remember reading something about that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go back just a little bit really quickly. You mentioned rest and digest, and just for those who are listening, rest and digest is our calmer state. So we talk about the nervous system just in case someone's listening and didn't know what that meant. So being in a calmer state helps to bring online all of the healthy, as my mind totally goes blank, all of the healthy endorphins. So intimacy starting long before we actually get to this place of sex. What are some things that you might recommend for people to do if someone say they've been in a long-term relationship, or not, maybe just married, but both very intent on climbing the ladder or already up the ladder, and their careers have huge demands of them, and they are forced to live in their heads, and realizing that the achievement in the bedroom appears a bit low. What would you recommend, or what suggestions might you have in terms of beginning to turn that around?
Yeah, and that's such an important part of being, I think for myself, that's so exciting working with people is that often they come to me already knowing the problem. And so we really look at, well, what's next? I mean, a lot of folks have already done a lot of therapy, marital counseling, or they've done individual therapy, or they've sat and journaled about it, but they know I'm suffering from this thing. Either it's unmet needs or desire discrepancy between partners, or an actual physiological thing that's changed about their body where it's not becoming aroused in the way they would like. And so we really talk about then how to move forward. What are some things that you can do to get to where you want to be? So I'm really um, I'm the person that helps you create that blueprint of moving forward towards your goals, right? And one of those things that we do is something that I've designed called the erotic fundamentals. So I have an erotic masteries course and curriculum, and I've got the erotic fundamentals, erotic 2.0, and then erotic mastery. And erotic fundamentals is really good for folks who maybe haven't been super intimate with each other in a while. I've worked with couples in, relationships spanning from, my sweet spot is around 10 years. Folks have been together about 10 years to about 30 years. And sometimes they have stopped really being intimate, really touching each other, or it's really quick. It's like a quickie. Nobody's really satisfied. And so it's really important to start with kind of three things that we look at. One is mindset. Where is your mind at? And that's some of that work that we talked about in the beginning, which is kind of unpacking some of maybe your cultural, religious, society's kind of expectations of you and your gender and your sexuality. What are the messages that you got, the conditioning that you got as a young person? We really take a look at that. And are those beliefs really limiting you? So we have some mindset work, and really, as we know that the mind informs the body. So how you think can inform how you feel. So we want to definitely work on the mindset. And then we work on your body. What's going on with your body? Are you meeting your arousal needs? Sometimes the body's just not, it's not turning on because it's not getting what it needs. So we have to really look at that. And for a lot of folks, they don't know, especially the women that I work with. They're like, I don't know what I need. And that's like, well, it's because you had never had it. How are you going to know until you have it? So I offer a couple of suggestions of things to try, and they're very small. So in my erotic fundamentals, we go really slow because, again, these folks maybe haven't really touched each other in a while, or so I start off real basic, and they try little things, dyad exercises in session, which are all G-rated. But then also they try things outside of session, and then we talk about it because the body informs the mind. If you don't know, you don't know. But then when you feel it, you're like, oh, yeah, that was it. So we need to talk about it. And then really environment, the context. So with human sexuality, it's super important to note that our brains are always scanning our environment for turn on and turn offs. So if you're in, say, for somebody, if their context, their environment is, say, super cluttered, all the lights are on, it's the middle of the day, then environment might tell their bodies, nope, I don't want to have sex right now. So we need to think of the environment. So those three things we really look at in the erotic fundamentals. And then I've got the 2.0, which is for folks who are like, yeah, we're good on the fundamentals. We just want to, let's get kinky, or, there's another step up. And then from there, there's the next step, but I'll just leave it at that. That's really the path forward. And it doesn't take a ton of sessions, honestly, because once folks really start to get in and kind of do the work with each other, it really does blossom fairly quickly. Yeah.
So, two questions. People who struggle in the bedroom, would you say, or do you know, have you explored, I'm sure it's come up, lack of a connection in the bedroom flows over into other areas of the relationship? And
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you're already following me. So I'm thinking,
I am.
okay. Um, so and this is more so about awareness for people. But I am imagining, and you can correct me if this is inaccurate, but if someone is frustrated with their intimacy in the bedroom or intimacy overall, then there are probably going to be issues in, say, communication, probably, or I'll say issues in the love languages, right? Whatever person's love language is, it may not be um,
Yeah.
adhered to because of a frustration that's sitting someplace else. So,
For sure. Yeah. Yes, 100%. Some people, when their sexual needs are not being met, they can sometimes feel like, more strain in the relationship. For some people, when their emotional needs are not being met, they can feel more strain in the relationship. Everyone's going to be different, and I don't really have any kind of um gauge on what's normal. So I don't say like, oh, you need to be having this amount of sex per week. I don't. I think that's up to you as an individual and in your relationship. However, desire discrepancy is a huge part of my practice, is what I see a lot of, where one person in the relationship really wants it more than the other. And it tends to be, I'm going to be generalist here, but it tends to be that the person who has the higher, say, sex drive, for them, if that's not being met, they're going to have a dip more, it's going to be more challenging to be really present to their partner. So I'm very careful in working with couples with desire discrepancy that we don't omit that person, because we want to do a lot of, I kind of like a female centric model. We want to really help like my female clients get their emotional needs met, because when that's happening, then they're more apt to want to be sexual. But I don't want to discount those folks, and I'm using male, female, but it could be all genders. I don't want to discount the men in the room who are like, but if I was just having sex, then I'd actually sit down and have an emotional conversation with you. So it's very tricky in those spaces for everybody to get their needs met. And this is where a specialist has to be crafty. I come in with my little crafts.
I just put my hand on my hip, like, wait a minute.
It's the
That,
opposite gender. I don't want to paint a gender
not,
picture here.
not even gender, but like that, you hit something right on. Like, if our emotional needs are met, then we can fulfill sexual needs. And the other partner is like, well, if my sexual needs are met, I can fulfill your emotional needs. And it's like, well, then where do we come together? How does this work?
How does it work? How does it work? Yes, yes, yes.
So, uh,
Secret sauce, for sure.
yeah, and like an intervention, right? When you can't do it on your own, an intervention is needed.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I wanna shift just really quickly, because this is something that I am very much aware that many people have experienced some level of sexual abuse in their childhood, and that it shapes how we respond in the bedroom. And again, this is more about awareness for someone who's listening, and awareness in terms of identifying maybe this is something that you've experienced, are experiencing, so that we don't sit in a space of wondering if something's wrong with me or thinking something's wrong with me, but really understanding that something happened. And as a result of that happening, we have a different response. So, and I will be candid. I experienced sexual abuse in my childhood, and it took a long time for me to feel safe in the bedroom um, because of that. And so I am just wondering if you have had any dealings with individuals, and I'm guessing, I've probably guessed you're going to talk about titration, but
Yeah.
just a person moving through, coming out of, and that is definitely a physiological feeling that dictates how we show up, or we are sitting in this state of protection. But what are your thoughts when we start thinking about sexual abuse and how it shows up in our adult life and long-term relationships, new relationships, what do you have to say about that?
Well, thank you so much for bringing that up. And it's important, as you know, a sexologist, that I'm being very mindful of the fact that people do have, you know, particular histories in childhood or even as an adult of assault, indiscretions, things like that. So I'm always being very mindful of the folks that I'm living with. They're human, and we come with a complexity of factors. You know, we touched a little bit on like how you were raised. You know, there's also, you know, whether you're a head type or a body type. And then there's also the fact of like, have you experienced harm? And harm and trauma, sexual trauma can come from so many places. It could be direct harm, physical harm. It could also be harm that's caused by being, you know, like a trans person and just not feeling comfortable in your body. It can come from so many factors. So I just sit here in this space with everybody and I just assume that we come with something. And I'm very careful in that I am very trauma informed, as I said before, with a caveat that I'm not a trauma psychologist or therapist. So I do think that folks should find, you know, in addition to working with me, also go down your personal journey. If that's somatic experiencing, like the work of Dr. Peter Levine, who I think is a beautiful adjunct, doing that or doing trauma therapy with a therapist. But I really do think that when folks have had direct or indirect physical or, you know, sexual abuse, that there's a lot of armoring in the body. So, and when I say armoring, I mean that the musculature of the, you know, like the pelvic floor, all through the body, absolutely all through the body, and also the pelvic floor can become very kind of blocked off. So we want to go really slow there, and I do teach couples how to, you know, touch each other. And so for just one person's loving, conscious, intentional touch with breath and yeah, creating a safe space can kind of help to slowly begin the process of unwinding some of that. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
And I really bringing that up. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you expounding on the varied levels of sexual abuse and what people may experience. I think also what I would add is relying on the person who may have experienced to share, to tell what is feels safe for them. Um, and I know that sometimes touch can not feel safe. So really asking and getting an understanding from them what feels safe, and so that we can get to the touch. You know, it may just be the communication, just talking. If I can look you in the eyes and talk, that might feel sexy enough for me. Right?
Yes. That's so important. I so appreciate you saying that, Catherine, and just your work as, you know, being a trauma coach, like how powerful it is to, yeah, have that be very much in the words of the client, like what they believe, what they're expressing as safety for their own system could be different than what I'm assuming it is. So I really appreciate you bringing that. Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. So we've been around, and I guess we can leave people to determine for themselves whether high achievement in the boardroom results in low achievement in the bedroom. We've given them a lot of information.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe a little leading, but a truth to it, right? Disconnection from the body probably does result in low achievement, lower connection.
And can I just share a little bit more on that and just kind of what I see with my clients? So I'm up here in Northern California, and a lot of my clients are in tech. And so so I've had to learn a lot about the tech brain, like the engineers. And there is definitely a way in which you can achieve. I guess they have boardrooms too. I'm sure they have boardrooms, but I think they're behind their computers a lot, even at home. But you can achieve a lot by like strategizing. Like I'm here and I want to go there. And these are the steps in which I take.
Yes.
And then they try to apply that to sex.
Mm,
And unfortunately, it doesn't fully translate over.
that's
So
good.
that's another little bit of re-education, or, like actually it's not a 10 steps to having the best sex of your life. Like that's not how it works.
One
Because
size
when you get into
fits
the
all.
body, it's about like the felt sense. So it's really teaching people about like this linear brain, and the body isn't super linear. It's all about sensation and really having them start to like feel their bodies. And that can be something as simple as just when you're taking a shower, feel the sensation of the warmth of the water on your body.
Yeah.
So it's very kind of nuanced in that way.
You're like opening up a whole new topic right now. I mean, they're like, and we're running out of time, but like the linear brain is celebrated. Strategy, how do we look at details? How do we, we are rewarded for creating steps.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say it doesn't transfer, it's like, wait a minute. Again, having to learn, then I have to be able to shift. I have to be able to shift away from this one area that has been very rewarding into another area. And then in line with that sensation, paying attention to the body, listening to the body has been discouraged for the most part. It's like
Yes.
your
Yes.
intuitive self, intuition, what? Who listens? No, that don't. So it's so fun, I'm gonna say, that you mentioned that, because that's something that really needs to be, I'm gonna say, highlighted, um, and helping people to just remember that we are very complex and not just one dimensional, right? So if in the boardroom or behind your screen, and really boardroom is a play on words, wherever you are and you're high powered or high achiever, then boardroom is for you. But if in that arena, the linear brain, strategic thinking, planning, analytical works, then let it be there. And then as you move into the other arenas of your life, if they require that you be in tune with your body, and we're talking sex, but I'm also thinking relationships with your children, right? That intuition raises up, or that felt sense, you feel the warm water against your skin, connecting yourself to your body, then we connect or tap into that aspect of us so that we can really be well-rounded and have a well-rounded life.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful, Catherine. I love it. I want that for everybody. That sounds like exactly the results that I want people to get and that they want too.
Right.
Absolutely. Yes, for all of us. And I think it's really not about that one is right or wrong or good or bad, or being in your head is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. We have amazing intelligence. I mean, I have a doctorate. Like I'm all about it. But it's really what you just said. You really pin the tail on the donkey, which is really that, we have it all. Can you have it all?
Mm-hmm.
Erotic mastery. That's what I'm really all about. Can you be a master in the boardroom and a master in the bedroom? I think you can.
Yeah, that feels good.
Good.
So, were you going to say something else?
No, I'm just loving this conversation. I could do this all day. So
No,
I know we need to end soon.
and like we always come to an end too soon. I was just going to ask, where can people find you? Where do they get more information about your erotic courses? Because I'm sure there's many people out there that want to have it all, right?
Yes,
Enough to,
absolutely.
but yeah, it only goes so far. Let's live life.
Let's live life. I love that. So you can go to my website is the best way to get a hold of me. It's super easy to remember. Teachmeaboutsex.com. And yeah, so quick and easy. Teachmeaboutsex.com. I always do a free consultation with folks, and we start off kind of the journey of an assessment. I also have an assessment, which kind of helps us understand where it is that you are. Are you at the fundamentals level? And even if you don't want to do any kind of modules or coursework or anything like that, I am absolutely open to meeting people where they are. So I can sometimes see have a conversation with somebody 1 to 3 times and they're on their way. Sometimes it's just about having that safe space, having a couple of conversations about it, and they're good to go. So it's really custom when working with me. Not super onto social media because I'm more in my body, I think. That's a part of me I haven't developed yet. Taking a walk. I'm not on Instagram on my social media. Yeah. So anyway, go to my website.
Yeah, teachmeaboutsex.com. So this has been super fun. I appreciate this. I appreciate you and the work you do. I think more so than anything, why I wanted to have you show up in this space was to just kind of dispel the myth that sex is a bad thing and bringing some awareness around the truth that the more we live in our head, the less connected we are to our bodies, which can create other issues in our relationships. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating a beautiful space to have this conversation. And all of your listeners, I really hope you got something out of this as well. Catherine, you're amazing. And I look forward to part 2. Whenever we want to have that conversation, I'd love to come back at some point and talk about the next.
We shall. And those of you that are listening, if you got something, please share it in the comments. Please share it in the comments. If you know anyone that is struggling in their relationship, you don't have to know if it has to do with sex or anything, just that they're struggling in their relationship. Share this episode with them. Share this episode with them. They may learn something. They may get an aha moment that is going to take their relationship in a direction that maybe they didn't expect. As I close, my prayer for you this week is that you will simply allow yourself to live a whole life without the restrictions that have been created by society, without the restrictions that have been created in religion. I will say, come to know truth for yourself. For me, in serving God, I get that truth by going to his word. So come to know truth for yourself. What I know about scripture, it says that he came that we may live and that we may live. He came that we might have life and that we might have life more abundantly. And when I hear abundance, I don't think in terms of limitations that have been placed by man. So that is my prayer for you. And as we sign off, I simply want to remind you that in this life, we get to choose. So choose to live a sensational life. Peace and blessings.
Thank you for listening to Where Her Heart Speaks with Coach Catherine, where Catherine aims to challenge and disrupt ineffective thoughts and behaviors to help you not only embody peace, joy, calm, and certainty, but also help you live the life you've always dreamed of living. Follow Catherine on Facebook and Instagram at I am Catherine James and visit www.catherinejames.com. Remember, to live the life of your dreams, you must go within and return to the place where your heart speaks.